Welcome back to One in the Trenches podcast. I'm Johnny Jones. This is Patches Kaplan. We're here to break down a little bit of Week 3 college football action and preview Week 4. Where do you want to start, Patch?
We could start in a few different directions, Johnny. We could review our picks from last week, where you had a tremendous week going 5 for 6. You're 14 for 25 on the year. And you get your first Cheesecake Factory win in Pitt.
Big one.
You caught
Come
me
on,
off guard.
man.
That was they scored with 32 seconds left?
Yeah, dude, that
They were
looked
down
really
10 in
bad.
the fourth, too.
Yeah, Pitt really showed it. I like Holstein, that quarterback. They're good. And I don't know. I feel like West Virginia, just been a few plays away in a bunch of games this year. Like, they looked pretty good in the first half against Penn State. And in this game, they should have won. But the backyard brawl, very underrated college football rivalry.
Yeah, they hate each other. It's interesting. Pitt has has a back-to-back win, both down 10 points in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
You can't teach that.
No,
that's a grittiness that's very, very hard to get. I don't even know how you go about that. It's just there's a certain type of leadership there that's working. I thought that was a really, really good win for them. We've talked a little bit about this though. Penn State opens up with WVU at West Virginia, and at the time we think, oh, what a tough game, what a tough matchup. Now they're 1-2.
Yeah.
Just like that, a tough matchup gets null and void by a record.
Yeah, no, I know. It just some teams kind of fall off, and I think that kind of points to West Virginia. You go in and you beat Penn State there. Their season's different. You know what I mean? The wins and losses so early in the season can really determine how the rest of the season goes, and just confidence wise, and just guys with injuries, how they choose to play, or whether they choose to come back, whether they choose to hold out. It's just these early games are so crucial.
They really are. We had another really good Friday night game in Arizona and Kansas State. And when I say a really good game, the game wasn't all that close. 31-7. Kansas State kind of dominated both sides of the field. That wide receiver, I think, had under 60 yards offense.
Yeah.
He was really pulled off in the Heisman race. Was Kansas State legit, or was Arizona a little bit overrated?
I think Arizona is just too top heavy. I think Fafita and McMillian are both studs, that quarterback and that wide receiver. But I think they really lost a ton of talent when Jedd Fisch left for Washington, which Jedd Fisch lost a tough one in the Apple Cup against Wazoo. But that being said, I think they're just very top heavy. I just don't think they're talented top to bottom, whereas Kansas State's a gritty team. Avery Johnson's a great quarterback. I think they play really hard. I think it's a little of both. I think Arizona just isn't quite as good as people thought they were going to be. But I also think you got to give all the credit to Kansas State really becoming a Big 12 threat.
Yeah, I think the Big 12 originally, I thought they were very top heavy. I thought that Utah, Oklahoma State, and Kansas State, and possibly Kansas were all going to compete for the Big 12. But in reality, I think it's Kansas State. I don't think that Utah's nearly as good without Cam Rising. And in a season where you can play up to 17 games, being healthy and having depth is important. Their backup quarterback had an okay game against Utah State, but it's Utah State at the end of the day. I think he only put up 2 touchdowns, barely over 200 yards. You need better performances out of that to win the Big 12. Jumping right into our next one, Bama goes up to Madison, Wisconsin, absolutely rolls them for a game that everyone was a bit excited for. It was kind of a letdown. Wasn't really all that close. Bama's not really skipping a stride here. They're still rolling pretty well with Kalen DeBoer heading into the next couple weeks. I think they have Georgia is in a few weeks.
Yeah, they got him coming up. But I think really I think it's just really going to take Luke Fickell time. I think he's a great coach. I think it's going to be time.
Pretty bad.
His recruiting's bad, but I think it's just going to take him time to really get the guys he wants to get there out Wisconsin. I think he's really trying to change the culture up there, and I think that's huge at a place like Wisconsin where they've had such an identity for so long. To change that is really going to take time.
But I don't really know why he was trying to change it in the first place. They had such a dominant run game. They were recruiting O-linemen with the best of them. Why try to go in and change that?
I just think it's not what
be able to coach really well. I think he should have, kept going with it, tried to get some of the best running backs in the country, some of the best tight ends in the country, and kept it going. But it doesn't seem like they have too much of an offensive identity. Tyler Van Dyke is very okay at best.
Yeah, and he's out for the season too, so I don't know who their backup is. But yeah, no, I just think it's what Luke Fickell prefers. Like, I think it's his coaching
Yeah.
style, what he wants to do. And I think he's trying to show Wisconsin. Like, Wisconsin, the past decade, has been a team that, could get 8, 9, even in the best year, like 10 wins, but they never really broke through that upper echelon of college football. And I think maybe Luke
Yeah.
Fickell thinks, yeah, 8, 9 wins in a bowl game is great, but he took Cincinnati to a playoff. Like, if we're gonna, and that was at Cincinnati. Like, if we're
Yeah.
gonna make that upper echelon and get to the big dance, then I think he's got to change stuff at Wisconsin. I think that's what he's trying to do. Which we'll see if it works out. We'll see in a couple of years.
Big Ten's tough. It's not
It's hard.
a conference that I would want to be in. Trying to make that leap from the Cincinnati's the AAC.
Yeah, but I just think what also is working against Luke Fickell is him getting hired that offseason the same time as Matt Rule. And, Matt Rule has kind of come in. He got Dylan Raiola. He's got some recruits. And you just saw he got a very emotional win against Colorado. Got a big game this week. We'll see how that goes. We'll talk about it later. But I just think no matter what, those two guys are going to get judged off each other because they're both hired at the same time. I think that's what
within the same 3 or 4 days. Both
I know.
Programs, both coming off some really good seasons. If you ignore Matt Rule's, time in the NFL, with Baylor and whatnot, he was coming off some really good college times. It is tough. They're interconnected very hard.
And
Matt Rule's beating him right now. But I don't think I think people are kind of forgetting about Luke Fickell as a head coach and what he can do to develop players.
And I think that's funny too, because if you think about that hire, I think a lot of people thought Wisconsin won that because there was such a bad taste in people's mouth about Matt Rule at his time with the Carolina Panthers. And I think people kind of forgot in the moment how good of a job he did both at Temple and Baylor. So I think people were like, Luke Fickell just won so much. I think a lot of people had recency bias with that hires, but we'll see how it goes. But Matt Rule definitely has been coaching some good football in Nebraska. It's going to take some time, but I think Luke Fickell will do a good job at Wisconsin.
Yeah, I think it's going to take a little bit. Those out-of-conference games against the top 5 team in the country,
brutal.
They don't make it easy. Your Ducks out in Eugene played
big
really,
one.
really well. They kind of dominated the field. I was getting a little bit concerned going into this week. Another tough outing against Oregon State, and I would have questioned their legitimacy. But dropped 48 points. Dylan Gabriel put himself right in that Heisman conversation again. And they're right back in being a top 3, top 5 team in the country.
Yeah, no, I think it's just time for them. Like, if you saw the beginning of the Bo Nix experience at Oregon, like, he didn't have some great games early on.
I think they lost 50-7 against Georgia.
They got murked. But I think it just really took time for a new quarterback to get used to a new system. And I think that's what you saw with Dylan Gabriel. Like, they've got all the talent in the world on the offensive line and at wide receiver, and their running back solid. But I think it just kind of takes time for everything to gel together. And their defense didn't look great against Boise State. But, I was nervous too going into halftime. It was 22-14. Then you saw them really just rip that thing open. And I think that was a very much needed win for Oregon. I think a lot of teams had some big wins. Like, if you talk about teams that look legit this week, you got to talk about Texas, Tennessee, and Miami. You got anything to say about any of those 3?
Yeah, I mean, I think Tennessee is not getting the respect that they deserve in the top 3 teams in the country.
Yeah.
I think that Tennessee is a force to be reckoned with. They go to Oklahoma. What town is it? Norman, right?
Norman.
Oklahoma. I think that the spread is 7.5, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit. But I think that game is a 35-point game, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Yeah. I thought the Sooners looked absolutely terrible against 2 weeks ago. They played. They won 16-12 or 16-14.
Oh, yeah.
It was just a very mediocre game. Their quarterback, Tyler something, or
Arnold. It's Arnold.
Arnold. I thought he was very mediocre. Who was it?
Houston, who just doesn't like great.
Yeah, it was just a very mediocre game. Then they come back and play good against Tulane, beat them 31-19. I still wasn't overly impressed, but on the flip side, I think Tennessee is an absolute force to be reckoned with. They have the defensive backs that they need to be competitive in the pass game. They have the defensive line. They have an offense that's going to be very, very hard to stop. I understand that home field advantage plays a big role in college football, but that spread should be closer to 15.
Oh, I agree with you. I think that's going to be Tennessee by a mile, but I think the spread more has to do with probably Nico's first big test on the road, which I kind of understand, like a young quarterback. And And what's going to be a very loud place like Norman? Like what else is there to do on the weekend in Oklahoma? Like I think that's going to be a crazy environment, but I think Tennessee is far and away better. They had like a very similar showing, I think, to Miami, whereas like where Nico looked great, dude. Cam Ward's sneaky, putting himself as a front runner for the Heisman.
Yeah.
Like he hasn't played great teams. I know they played Florida, who hasn't looked great, but against Ball State this week, he was near perfect. Like they would just
Yeah, he's
lay
running
it
the ball
on.
great. He's throwing the ball great. Miami looks really, really good. I feel a little bit silly for my preseason predictions about them. I think they're obviously in the driver's seat for the ACC.
Yeah,
About to secure themselves a spot into the playoffs with a couple more games. The ACC sucks. That's
yeah,
without being said. I don't see them struggling at all throughout the year. I think the only game that they struggle with, believe it or not, is Florida.
yeah.
I think that Florida is in a weird situation that we can talk about in a few minutes, but it's a situation where I think that Florida's in a situation that they can ruin some seasons. If that
Yeah,
makes sense.
Florida State, yeah.
That they can go in and beat Ole Miss, that they can go in and beat Texas super unexpectedly. That last 5 or 6 weeks of the year they play, the Gators play like Georgia, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Bama, Auburn, or something crazy like that. And I think they go, 2 for 4 in those, or whatever they do, they can really mess up some seasons. But, I think that Miami is, full steam ahead. They're going right for the playoffs. They're a really good team. I was very
Yeah.
impressed with discipline throughout the week. I thought they
We
played really, really well.
we can kinda use this to go into the next game, but, like, I think we could really get a rematch of the Catholics versus the Convicts in the ACC championship between BC and Miami. I'm
Wasn't
serious.
that Notre Dame in Miami, Johnny?
No, it was Notre Dame, Miami. Oh, I'm thinking of, no, do you know what I'm thinking of? Doug Flutie's Hail Mary. Was that I
Yes.
think that was against Miami. Catholics versus this is whatever, another Catholic school.
Yeah.
Maybe Catholics versus Convicts part 2 with BC.
BC, that game against Mizzou was very, very surprising.
Yeah,
It's tough when a team they had a good season last year, which was their first good season probably in our lifetime, but they had Mizzou's number. And
yeah.
it always pisses me off when you have the number. You never want to let a wounded dog breathe. You got to put them
No,
down. You
got
had
him.
they were up, I think, 14-3. You got to be able to figure out a play design, figure out something to get first downs, get that clock running, to punch in the extra scores, become a three possession game. And ultimately, they didn't. They lost the game. I thought Mizzou was overall a better team. Mizzou is a very good team. So is BC.
I think you got to give so much credit to Bill O'Brien. He's done a great job since walking in there. But that was such a big win for Missouri because dropping one before SEC play starts would have been devastating.
What's crazy about the Bill O'Brien thing is it just goes to show that there are these elite coaches that can step into a program and turn around instantly.
Yeah.
Right. And you look at, players like him or coaches like him, you've seen some up and downs with the greats, but ultimately where I'm going to go with this is that Florida is in a really uncomfortable position.
Yeah.
They start the year 1-3 or 1-2. Only team that they beat was Samford. People were actually concerned at points that they were going to lose to Samford. And I'm not saying they should have beat Texas A&M. I thought Texas A&M is a good team. Yeah. But people were saying that that's either going to make it or break it again for Billy Napier, who obviously we don't know personally, but I've heard he's a great guy. But what do you do if you're Florida here, Johnny? You finish out the season because obviously there's not going to be any good candidates as of right now that are going to be willing to leave their programs. Now that there's a 12-team playoff, you can assume the top 12 coaches of the year are going to get it, right? So, and that's probably a bold statement. But where I'm going with that is you're saying the top 12 coaches, probably out of the 20 best coaches in the nation, are going to be playing all the way into January.
Yeah.
And you're going to miss that first cycle. Anyone that you want could maybe be an elite assistant and or an NFL coach that didn't make it or an old retiree.
I really don't know what to do about Florida. Like they're in such a bad spot right now because, they're going to lose that seat at the table, especially with teams like Texas and Oklahoma joining the conference. Like there's more big dogs in the conference and they're just slowly kind of falling behind. So, like, you're right.
Yeah.
Like
Such an appetizing place to play and coach because they can recruit with the best of them. Like Billy Napier is not even a good recruiter. He still had I think a top 10 recruiting class 2 out of those 3 years.
Guys want to play there. Guys want to win there. That Florida high school football is legit. Like you're gonna get guys. That's why it's so tough right now for them. But I don't know. I don't love firing a guy mid-season. I think sometimes it's necessary, but I think it just puts the rest of your season? Like, what are you just gonna chalk it up as just a wash? Like, I don't know. I feel like it put I don't know, like with an interim coach,
It's tough.
like the one like
There's
that.
really only one way you can do this adequately is to fire him, have one of your assistants step up, who's probably worse than he is, and coach out the rest of the year. Then there's the other option, which Matt Berry was talking about with Paul Feinbaum today, about what if they fired him and they got one of the great legends to come in and coach the rest of the season. Something like Bill Belichick, Bob Stoops, Nick Saban, Urban Meyer. Just say, hey, listen, to no strings attached. We'll pay you whatever you want. You have 9 games with this team to make sure that we can still get recruits.
Urban down in Gainesville Part 2 would be wild.
I'm trying to think like how I would feel about that. Like it would. You got to go. Not there for Florida to where like you're not like on the verge of this great team that all you need is a really good coach. They stink and they play a really, really hard schedule where scheme is only going to play so much of a role and they're just going to get outplayed. There's no way around that. And I don't even know if that would save it. But how desirable of a job is Florida?
I think it still is very desirable. We just said it like 5 seconds ago. Like, you're always going to get recruits. You're in the SEC. Like, I think there's guys that would die to get an SEC
but now
job.
That's a 12-team playoff. Like, you're not going to get those coaches that were lower end SEC coaches for the lower end SEC programs to make that switch. Like Eli Drinkowitz, he's not making that switch.
No, but I think you'll get.
Kiffin sure as hell isn't going to make that switch. I bet everyone's counting their dollars to get Lane Kiffin, but he ain't going there.
But I think you're going to get the best of other conferences. Like, I think you'll get like a great guy from the ACC or like why don't you go to like a coordinator? You know what I mean? Like a hot coordinator right now. Like, I think there's guys that
you don't think they made that mistake with Billy Napier? They went with a small time coach who was on the up and rise, and it just turned out disastrous.
I don't know. I think the biggest mistake was firing Dan Mullen. I'm still not over that. That seems crazy right now.
You know, it was all because of a press conference. I didn't realize that at first.
Yeah, I always heard that the boosters and the fans got pissed that didn't he say like he wasn't going to recruit in the middle of the season?
No, he just said, I don't want to talk about recruiting. That's all he said.
Yeah, and people got
like, I don't want to talk about recruiting right now.
Because if you're not winning on the field, you better be winning on the recruiting trail in the SEC. Yeah. And that smoked him. And, you know, the grass isn't always greener.
No, it's not. And it's very, very interesting. Idaho's coach actually said something about the grasses. He said something about the transfer portal. He basically said something like the grass is greener if you give it time to get greener. Something on those lines. I'm paraphrasing. Basically saying that you should wait until you're a really good team, increase your draft stock. Why leave for a program that'll give you $125,000 a year when you can stay at Idaho, for instance, you know, double your stock worth and go sign a $500,000 a year NIL deal with a bigger team just because you stayed an extra year and proved that you're a better quarterback, better corner, running back, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I like that take. I think that's great.
Yeah, no, I think that, you know, both those Florida jobs, that and Florida State are very, very interesting. I think that Florida is a surefire. That job is going to be open. Florida State, it's still speculation as of right now. I don't know what your opinions are on Mike Norvell, if he's going to stick around. Can he stick around? Are they going to keep him around? This is getting ugly.
After the 0-2 start, I was like, you know, he still was undefeated last year. You got to keep him. You got to keep him. I don't know anymore because I'm starting to really think like you got to get him. You got to get him out of there because not only did you lose to Memphis, but that was his last job, Memphis. He lost to his old assistant. Like, imagine how good that tastes for Memphis. You get your guy. You've got your guy, Mike Norvell, there. You're playing good football. He leaves for a bigger pond. He leaves. You hire his coordinator, and then you go out there and beat him. That's crazy.
DJU is absolutely terrible, and this like facade of like giving him time just doesn't make sense. Dude's averaging less than 185 yards a game. It's embarrassing out of a 5th-year senior at this point at a major program like that. He's an absolute joke, and they need to bench him, and they need to move on, and they need to try something different. Your back is against the wall. Why not throw everything you have in it? And I've heard from a lot of people and a lot of podcasts and videos and analysts that, like, it just ain't there at Florida State. The energy isn't there. No one wants to play. No one cares about anything. It's just absolutely hideous from start to finish. And, you know, I guess it's getting uglier and uglier by the game, and it doesn't surprise me. Florida State's a job that I would, if I was an elite coach, would take over Florida. I think the ACC is not a great conference. I don't think it's getting better.
Yeah.
And I think that it's probably yours for the taking. You know, they're looking for the next dynasty in the ACC.
Yeah, the only thing that I would get nervous about Florida State is like, how long is the ACC going to be in this world? Like Florida State before the season, weren't they actively trying to sue the ACC to kind of get out of there? And like, who knows where they're going to end up? But I don't know. Like, I don't know what the future of that conference is. I think that's up in the air. But I agree. Like, that's a place you can win. Like, they won a national championship not too long ago, Jameis. Like, that is a place you can, that rich history, Bobby Bowden, Deion Sanders, like all these like really stars have played there, have done great, Heisman winners. And I think it's got a rich culture, and you always gonna like it's kind of like Florida also, where like you're always gonna have recruits there. So
Yeah.
I think it's a great
Did you
job.
just do something different with your volume?
Did I? No.
Huh. It sounds so much better now, all of a sudden out of nowhere.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Plus for me. Okay, last for the teams that looked really good, Texas. Talk to me about Texas. Talk to me. Do we have a quarterback controversy?
I don't think we have a quarterback controversy. I think that they're absolutely licking their chops with the opportunities that they have down in Texas.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
unbelievable in back-to-back weeks. I know it's just UTSA, but still not an easy team. They shut them out, right? It was like 56-0.
Yeah.
Like it was a remarkable game, a remarkable effort. Obviously, Archie Manning stole the show with that 65 or 68-yard run. One of
He
the
was
longest
moving.
Texas recent memory besides Vince Young. He was cooking, sitting 22 miles an hour.
Yeah.
It's tough to say. Quinn Ewers is legit. Obviously, the dude is so fragile. There's no way around that. He is absolutely incredibly fragile. That will be a concern once you start playing the big dogs in the SEC and you're getting hit more. And there's a possibility that they play 17 games this year. But I think that they're very happy with where they're at. I think Quinn Ewers, I think this is a really good opportunity for Texas as the season goes on. Why don't they just kind of rest him until he's 100%? They have Archie Manning. There's nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
And then he can come back for Oklahoma on October 12th, or he can come back for Georgia, I think, right around Halloween, and be fully rested, fully ready to go. Yes, he won't win the Heisman, but he'll be ready for the second half of the season and fully healed. I think that they look like the number one team in the country. I think they were voted AP number one. Doesn't sweat.
Yeah, no, they're rolling. Both sides of the ball look great. I think you're right. Going into the season, a big thing was like, will Quinn stay healthy? I think now that you have Archie Manning show, he can play some ball. I think that really makes fans a lot less nervous that, hey, if something bad down the road happens, we're not totally screwed. So I think that really helps fans of the Longhorns.
Yeah, I thought they looked remarkable. The other really good teams of the year, I thought kind of struggled a little bit. Georgia barely squeaked out Kentucky. I thought that was going to be a slaughterhouse. He played Kentucky the week prior. They dominated the game, kind of blew the game a little bit, and Georgia got out of there with a win. Doesn't surprise me. They were always going to, but
I don't know. 13-12 is tight.
It is.
Against a team, it's not like Kentucky hasn't looked great this year. They got held to 44 passing yards against the Gamecocks, against South Carolina. I think Georgia thought I think this might have been a look-ahead spot where they thought they were going to go in and just roll Kentucky. But big props to the Wildcats because, man, they almost stole one, and that would have been huge.
Oh, it would have been remarkable. And then speaking of the Gamecocks, an absolute blown game against LSU.
Oh, that was.
Because the whole time I'm thinking to myself, how does Shane Beamer still have a job? Right?
I don't know. He's been so underwhelming. It's also been 8 years since they've beaten LSU. This was their chance at home. You have the lead.
I checked the score. I was busy all Saturday, but I checked the score. I was very happy there. I think they were up 10 points at one point. I was licking my chops because I bet USC. I was like, Brian Kelly ain't it. LSU ain't it.
Yeah.
And just like typical Brian Kelly, he knows how to win big games. He knows how to win those close ones. That not roughing the passer, but the unnecessary roughness play against the quarterback. While it's a dumb play to make, I don't think it's not a non-football play. That was the number one thing coaches always used to preach during interception was go hit that quarterback as hard as you possibly can because it's the only time you ever can. And it's just absolutely ridiculous the efforts that these referees are going through to throw flags. Yeah. I saw a play over the weekend. It was Indiana LSU. The Indiana outside linebacker, the whip, Brown in the corner and absolutely destroyed the QB on a drop back pass. Like one of the most textbook hits I've ever seen. They called him roughing the passer because the way he landed on him.
Yeah, no, the landing stuff blows my mind.
blows my mind. It's so subjective. Roughing the passer used to be you throw the ball, I take 2 steps, and I hit you as hard as I can. That is roughing
Yeah,
the passer.
that's what
It
it should
not
be.
be hitting the quarterback after he throws the ball. Now
Yeah.
it's I hit the quarterback, even if it's a sack, it still could be roughing the passer if I hit him too hard.
No, that's what the thing is, like, when we're getting into arguing about how people should land on other people, that's crazy because
No,
it happens way too fast for people to really be able to
I
move out of it.
with South Carolina and LSU, but I did see the replay, and what I was expecting was that the ball was running on the left side of the field. This guy chased the quarterback on the right side of the field and
Yeah.
completed 45 yards. He threw it. He was still in the pocket. All the entire LSU offense was still in the pocket, and then he hit him. Like, no one was even dispersed yet. That's how quickly the transition was. But
Yeah.
it's just a ridiculous call to me. I absolutely hate in sports when the referees can decide games by a subjective call like that, because that quarterback is a live player. He can be an athlete and go make that play.
Oh,
if
yeah.
He takes the ball and it's Lamar Jackson, the odds that Lamar can catch up to him, high.
Yeah.
You need to block him. He's a player.
Yeah. No, it's ridiculous.
It's
especially in a close game like that. That's a shame. It's awful. Yeah.
No, it really, really is. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I disagree with that wholeheartedly. So moving forward, Johnny, so we talked a little bit about, coaches that are already on the hot seat going into week 4, which is a crazy concept. We have a couple of really good games. We're starting to open up into conference play. You're going to start seeing playoff implications. You're going to start seeing conference championship implications. Just a reminder, I am up 11 points to 3 on the Cheesecake Factory underdog play. You are beating week-to-week matchup. You're batting just under – you're batting pretty good. You're batting about 60% right now. 14 for 25. That's not bad. 5 for 6 week. Just to recap, you had – last week we both had K-State. You had Bama. You had BC. You had Oregon. You had Notre Dame. And then you had Washington, which is a tough one.
That one hurts. That one
did. So – going to this week, we talked a little bit about Nebraska and Dylan Raiola having his first big test. It's going to be a really tough game. I believe this one's at home against Illinois.
Yeah, it's at Nebraska.
7.5-point favorites. I think if it was at a neutral site, it'd be about 3 points. It is certainly a big game. But the thing that's nice about having big games with young quarterbacks is that when your defense is as good as Nebraska's, there ain't much you got to do.
No.
You have to play a very mediocre game to get through this one.
No. And I think this game is going to be closer than people. I think a lot of people right now are picking Nebraska by a lot, but I think this game is going to be really close just because I think this is kind of a look-ahead spot for Nebraska. Like, I think all the hype's on them right now. I think they're looking down the line at that Ohio State matchup. I think Illinois is a very good football team. I love Belima. I think he's a great coach. What? Yeah, and they need this win because later on they have to play Penn State, Oregon, and Michigan. I know Michigan sucks, but if you're Illinois, that's a big win against Michigan on any year.
You'll never look those ones in the face. I think that Illinois can cover. I'm not sure that they can win this game. I haven't watched enough of the Illinois' offense, but I do really like Nebraska where they're going. But I do agree with you with the look ahead. Everyone and their mothers are saying Nebraska's going to Ohio State at 6-0.
Yeah.
They have 2 really hard games ahead of those in both Illinois, Indiana, going into Ohio State. And I really do think that they're going to struggle with one of them.
Yeah, and I think this is the game they're going to struggle because I think Illinois plays great on defense. They score the ball on defense. They get turnovers. I think Altmaier at quarterback does enough to keep them in this game. I still think Nebraska gets it. I think Illinois is going to cover. But just like I said, I think it's a look-ahead spot for Nebraska. And I think, Belima is a good enough coach to keep this close, the defense keeps them in this game. And I think they're very hungry. So I think Nebraska, but I think Illinois definitely covers.
Yeah, I think Nebraska wins this one. I think it's going to be one of those front door covers where they score a touchdown with 2 minutes left. I think it's a 10-point game. If I was to bet it, I'd probably pick Illinois, but in this competition, I'm going to pick Nebraska just because I think at home. I think it's a true touchdown game, but I do think Nebraska will get it late. Going to an ACC matchup that makes absolutely no sense to me. North Carolina State versus Clemson. Clemson's a 20.5-point favorite right now. Opened up at 17.5. What's going on there?
I think it's one word. I think it's one word. I think it's Tennessee. I think the way Tennessee beat NC State has people so afraid of NC State.
And they think that Clemson with Cade Klubnik can do the same. That's just a ridiculous thought. There's obviously something I'm missing because that's a 3-touchdown game.
That's crazy. Did you say it's 28.5?
20 and a half.
20 and a half.
So literally 3 touchdowns. It just looked. We went from Clemson is the most overrated offense, Dabo Swinney is the most overrated coach, to now suddenly saying they are a playoff contender, which is comical to me because they ain't. To they're going to run the ACC and see Miami in the championship. I just can't wrap my head around that. The flip we've made on Clemson in 14 days is just remarkable.
Yeah, this is tough because these are two teams that I've been high on different sides of the ball for them. I really thought Grayson McCall was going to be better at NC State. And at the same time, I love Clemson's defense. I thought Clemson's defense looked great in the first half against Georgia. I thought their offense really let them down with the inability just to extend drives, not even score. I'm just saying, get a couple first downs and give your defense a break. I think Clemson's defense is great, but if they can't get first downs, they're not beating anyone by 20.
No, absolutely not. Especially 3 touchdowns is a lot, especially with a good defense out of NC State. I got to take NC State here. I just don't like Clemson. I don't like Clemson. And I certainly don't think that they're going to be, the bullies in the ACC.
No.
Another matchup that makes absolutely no sense to me, and anyone who's watched either of these teams all year cannot explain this one to me. USC is -5.5 against Michigan. Obviously, it's in the Big House. It's obviously probably the first time they've played together in a long time. Everything about this game is USC is on the climb, and they're playing unbelievably well. Michigan sucks, and they're terrible. Why is that not more?
I think it's really just recency bias. I know like recency bias. You think, well, Michigan hasn't
bias, if anything.
No, I'm not saying like good. I'm saying the last 2 years. I think people still like in the Big House thinking Michigan the past 2 years, thinking of that defense. And we talked about it last week on the pod, but this defense is so talented, and for them to look this bad, it's crazy. Both those D tackles and Will Johnson, both preseason All-Americans. All 3 of them. Like, they just don't play well as a team.
There's no synchrony as a team. Their quarterback situation is terrible. Their play calling situation is terrible. I don't see how Lincoln Riley doesn't throw, overhead every single time. He doesn't scheme the hell out of them. I think that this game neutral site should be a 10-point game. At the Big House should be a 7-point game. I got to take USC here. I think USC is going to be a front runner for the Big Ten. It's not going to be long in our lifetime that I don't think that it's going to be 6 teams from the Big Ten and 6 teams from the SEC, and they outline each Power 4 gets a team in. Just because you're going to have crazy good teams in the Big Ten this year, and it's going to essentially they're going to eat each other alive, right? Yeah. All be good, especially when your majority of your games are in conference. It isn't feasible. But USC is a very high quality team. I think Michigan's a sub 500 team once they get into actual complicated play. I'm going to take USC, and I'd go as far as say I'm going to stretch that to 13.5.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on the taking USC too, just because I think the biggest question mark the past 10 years for Lincoln Riley has been defense, and they've played great on defense this year. And look at Michigan; they're in a 10-point game with Arkansas State last week.
Yeah, it's just remarkable. Team that would have Arkansas State last year by 50+ points.
This defense is going to swallow up Michigan. Michigan can't move the ball.
No, not at all. And I don't know if you look at the lines right when they come out, Johnny, but I swear this one flipped. We have Utah at Oklahoma State, a very high coveted matchup in conference play. Definitely implications for the Big 12 championship. I thought it opened up at Oklahoma State -4.
No, it did. But Kyle Whittingham came out and said Cam Rising's playing.
He's a dog. That's what happens when you're 30 years old.
Wait, storyline though for this game. Both quarterbacks 7th-year seniors. That's crazy. Alan Bowman.
They entered college at 20 or 18 years old. They're actively in college at 25 right now.
Yeah, so Alan Bowman started at Texas Tech, played some football there, went to Michigan. Now he's at third stop at Oklahoma State, and obviously everyone knows the legend of Cam Rising. Been at Utah since
they couldn't drag him at this point.
What'd you say?
They couldn't drag him away if they tried. He is there.
Oh no, and I love it. I hope he plays there my whole life.
That Utah with Cam Rising is a force to be reckoned with. I haven't seen enough of Cam Rising in Utah this year to be truly confident in them, but I have seen some good play at Oklahoma. This one I'm very confused on. I don't know really what to believe. I'm going to go with Cam Rising and Kyle Whittingham. I think that Utah's just a really good team, and they have their eyesight on the Big 12 championship with Kansas State. I got to take Utah on a field goal here.
Yeah, no, Utah's my preseason pick to win the Big 12, so I have to stay with him here. I think it's very concerning that Ollie Gordon just they haven't gotten him going. I know they've scored a lot of points. I think they've scored 35 points in all their games with Oklahoma State, but I think the inability to get Ollie Gordon going is going to cost him this game because I think he's their best player by far. They
Yeah.
need to get him going. Their offensive line's been good in the pass protection. Hasn't gotten that push up front, though, in the run game. And I think Kyle Whittingham is a great. I think he's one of the best coaches in college football. And I think if Cam Rising's healthy, this seems a legitimate force.
Yeah, I think they could be a really, really good team. Another big SEC matchup. We got Tennessee versus Oklahoma. Tennessee is a touchdown favorite, heading to an away game as a touchdown favorite. Any game in the SEC is hard, especially as Oklahoma. But I don't think it's hard for Tennessee. I think this is
Hammer Tennessee. Hammer Tennessee.
Yeah, I think that they go out, score on the first or second drive, and then they score every other drive from there on out. Oklahoma has done nothing but leave me wanting more. Excuse me. Their quarterback remind me of his name.
For who?
Oklahoma.
Arnold. Oh, for
Yeah,
Oklahoma, Arnold. Yeah.
yeah.
Jake Arnold, maybe.
He was supposed to be a Heisman candidate. He's done nothing special. Their win against Tulane looked just like Kansas State's. But you're Oklahoma, you should be better than them, but they're not. Tennessee has a legit defense, has a legit offense. Their O-line is really, really good. They have speed on the outside. I just don't think Oklahoma's there yet. I think they're very underdeveloped. I think they're underwhelming is a really good way to put it. Give me Tennessee. Give me Tennessee by 20.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like you said earlier, move the line to 13.5 for another game. I was like, I'll do that for this game because
Yeah.
I do think there's a lot to be said about Nico's big first road game. I think he's looked great so far. I think he will play great in this game, but I think Norman's gonna be packed. It's gonna be a loud stadium, a hostile environment. But I think even if he struggles in the first half, that pass rush, James Pierce Jr.
Yeah.
of Tennessee is just way too good. They're going to get after Arnold, and I think it's not going to matter. And I think it's going to be
Ultimately, I don't think Oklahoma can keep up, and I think that 7 points is too little for a team that literally can't keep up with Tennessee. I think at most this game's a 14-point game.
Yeah, like it's just like I don't know. I want to see a great shootout, classic Oklahoma game, but that 16-12 win against Houston scares me because Houston has really looked poor this whole season, and I don't know, man. I think Tennessee's really gonna bring it to them.
And then we've talked about this team a couple times tonight. We have BC versus Michigan State. I want to throw this one in there just because it's a very interesting out-of-conference matchup.
Yeah.
We have two really up-and-coming teams. I bet you don't agree with me in Michigan State. I thought they've looked really, really good.
No, I love their coach. I love their coach.
But, Michigan State is actually my Cheesecake Factory pick of the night. I think for the second time this year, I think they get a win against BC. I think that they can really sling the ball. I'm really expecting some good things out of Michigan State moving forward. I'm hoping that this can really projectile them for the rest of the season.
What's the line?
6.5.
I'm taking BC. I think BC is a great football team. I don't like BC. I'm a Boston guy, but I grew up hating BC.
Why?
Just always was a UNH guy. Like as a kid, so many UNH hockey games I went to, and I watched. What'd you say?
Last time we played, I think you were in like 4th grade.
No, I know, but I'm just saying. I think I just went to too many UNH BC hockey games as a kid, and all my friends were BC fans, and all. I just heard way too much of it. Get it out of my face.
That's fair. I like seeing BC come back. New England cares so little about college football that it's actually kind of exciting to see a team that can really make a ruckus. Obviously the Patriots dominate our region.
Yeah.
Seeing a team like BC, play really well is exciting to me. I think that they're a really, really good team. I'm rooting for Michigan State here because I love Michigan State as a team.
I love Bill O'Brien, though. I do like Bill O'Brien. I think he's a great coach. I loved him at Penn State. Obviously, loved him with the Patriots.
How long is he going to be there, though? Because he is getting old.
I think he's going to be there a little bit because he's a Massachusetts guy. I think he's got all his family here. I think he's actually going to be here a little bit.
Interesting.
I don't think he made that big jump to Houston to coach the Texans. I don't see him leaving for a big name because he could have done that. He could have been at Ohio State coaching the offense this year, but I think he wants to stay at home. I think this is like his job.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I'm curious about his longevity due to age, the program, where it's going to go, things like that. It is interesting. Who is your Cheesecake Factory pick of the week?
Baylor at Colorado. I think the line
Oh,
last time I checked was -2 for Colorado.
so we got Baylor +2 is what you're taking. Were you not
Yes.
Colorado State? I know we said we would never talk about Colorado again, but I thought they had a pretty good rebound game. Travis Hunter played out of his skull.
Yeah.
I think they're kind of catching their wind a little bit, as much as I hate to say it.
I thought they looked great. I thought the offense looked great. The offensive line protected Shador. I just think, I think Baylor recruits at a higher level than a Colorado State. I think they're gonna be able to match their talent. Obviously not like Travis Hunter, but I think the rest of their talent on the outside, they're gonna be able to line up a little better. I still think Miranda's a good coach. I know he struggled tremendously the past 2 years, but I think he's still a good coach. I think they're able to go in and find a way. I just don't I think he's just a way better coach than Dion at the end of the day. I think scheme wise they're gonna be able to outplay him, and I think they've got the talent level to kind of match them more, both up front and on the outside.
Yeah, it's exciting. We're getting close to. I think everyone and their mother is excited for October 12th. I don't know if you've looked at the slate for that day, but it's like I think it's like Michigan, Penn State, Oklahoma, Texas, Bama, Georgia.
Craziness, yeah. The next
It's
couple of weeks are gonna be awesome.
Yeah, no, the next 6 weeks. We used to always talk about at UNH about how important October is, and it's the honest truth. It makes or breaks teams. Like everyone can look good in September, and it was one of the things that Lamar did in college. He always looked really, really good in September, but when the ACC game started playing in October, he won himself the Heisman one year, but like come October play, he was very mediocre.
Yeah.
And when you're playing those conference games, you've never seen a player like you or never seen your team. It's very easy to look really, really good. But when you're going to play that team for the 100th time in a century, it's a lot harder.
Yeah, one more thing I want to mention before we wrap up is it's not really important for this year, but moving forward, I think it's going to be very important in college football. Is the Pac-12 is back?
It is. Yes, we forgot to bring it up. They
Yeah,
have.
I know. Washington State, Oregon State obviously staying, but they added Boise State, Colorado State, Fresno State, and San Diego State. I think this is going to be a tremendously fun conference. Like you got like Wazoo, Boise, Fresno. These are some teams that traditionally have high-powered offenses.
So how is that going to impact the playoff? Are they now going to call that a Power 5 team and say
I
that how the top 5 teams get 1 through 5 and Notre Dame gets 6?
I don't think so. I don't think they're going to look at the Pac-12 as a power conference just because of who's joining and who's staying. But I think it's going to be a fun conference. I grew up watching Pac-12 After Dark, that 10 p.m. game. You fall asleep at halftime. You wake up in the fourth quarter. You just like a shootout is going on. Like I think it's going to be.
Yeah, it was sad to see it go, and I love what the commissioner said about Colorado being too scared to join. I thought that was hilarious.
Oh yeah,
It doesn't surprise me. I think that it will be some really fun new teams, and I really like the fact that they're all kind of within the same geographic area.
yeah,
I love that. I hate that about the Big Ten right now. How UCLA, I
correct.
think it's UCLA is going to travel like 10 or 12,000 miles this year. Like those
Correct.
poor kids. They started out with Hawaii. They're going to go across the country all the way to Maryland, and
Yeah.
they're going to Michigan's, and it's just sad to see. But I love the fact that this is coming back. 2026 is going to be a really fun year with that conference. You're spot on.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for it. I love you said it best. Like I love these geographic conferences. I think it just makes it fun. I miss that, and I think this is going to be some fun, high scoring football.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. Well, thanks, Johnny. Best of luck with your Baylor bet, and we'll tune in next week.
Yeah.